I'd like to present three premises and then ask a question based on those premises, which I believe are biblical. First premise is God is a God of purpose and design. If God is a God of purpose and design, then his purpose and design should be reflected in his universe and should especially be reflected in the end product of his universe. End product is the key word here. When he created the universe, he had an end product in mind. Premise number 2. God, being all-wise and powerful, is able to create and maintain his universe in such a way as to arrive at that end product. God's universe will, in fact, arrive at his desired end product. Premise number 3. It is not God's pleasure or will that his universe end up with the greater percentage of his creatures eternally alienated from himself, and even more so, suffering a miserable eternal torment. The question, based on those three premises, which I believe are biblical again, is if the prevailing Christian worldview is true that the greater percentage of humankind will suffer eternal torment, or for that matter, even one of his creatures, why would he create a universe whose end product he would be eternally displeased with, an end product which would be contrary to his will? Or do you believe that he is both pleased with and has willed that his universe turn out this way?
Good question. I think when you say that the third one is also biblical, I'm not quite sure what you mean. You're either implying by that God has had his purpose foiled now, and therefore he's a finite God and not infinite, or that he made a statement somewhere that the end result would have a greater number trusting in him and not distrusting in him. So that third premise, when you say is biblical, is forced in. It is not a biblical principle that a greater number follow him. That is your interjection. It is not a biblical principle. Now let me proceed with that. The fact of the matter is that, as you said, even if one person does not. I remember that in the Nuremberg trials when somebody made the comment, I didn't expect that it would go this far. And one of the judges rightly responded saying, the first time you punished an innocent person, you already went too far because life is of such value even individually. Now, the only way the question can be a valid question is if you base it upon a moral law. There is no other way to make this question a valid question, unless you say that it is something that is conventional in the way you feel things should have been done, but there would be no way to argue for it other than just subjectively. So if you are invoking a moral law, you have to posit the moral lawgiver. You cannot oust him from the paradigm. So this question, as thorny as it is only thorny and valid if a moral lawgiver actually exists. So please separate the answer from the question very clearly, that the question does not dethrone God from existence. It still has to keep him in there. Now, you have to recognize that when God in his sovereignty has made us, in what the Bible says, made us for his glory and for his praise. That's the term that is used. The word glory is the divine accolade that is given to us, well done. But love, in its highest manifestation, will always have to be chosen. The great sacred gift that God has given to us is the freedom of choice. And whether 10 choose to follow or 20 choose to follow, the sacredness of the will always have to be honored. When you think in terms of the separation between heaven and hell, I think we make possibly a false leap in thinking that X number who are condemned to a Christless eternity are condemned there in some way against their wish, or in some way that they have been set aside to a choice that they would not have made. That is not the case. C.S. Lewis made the comment, there are two kinds of people in this world. Those who bend their knee to God and say, your will be done. And those who refuse to bend their knee to God, to whom God in turn says, all right, your will be done. So an eternal lostness or separation from God is a confirmation of a choice. You can reverse the whole question and ask it this way. If every life is of infinite value, There's not even one that gains into heaven and gains the divine accolade, accomplishing then a purpose of enormous worth. The question raises itself qualitatively, but then brings in on the side a quantitative analysis that would be much more a utilitarian ethic on the basis of which to judge it. And God's ethic is not a utilitarian one. It has to be judged on the quality of the freedom and the sanctity of will, and that heaven and hell are the confirmation of individual choice, which is what the end result will be. Now, we also assume in this one little bit of content that we think we know what the end result will be. Let us know what has already been done. It is not that he has done nothing. He has been patient. He has sent his son to the cross. He has planted his church. He manifests his love. Why don't we leave the end result to an all-knowing and an all-sovereign God? For me, infinitude to argue quantitatively that the end result is truly the accomplishment of an infinite mind would be self-defeating. So if you posit him as the moral lawgiver and infinite and sovereign, then let him measure the end result where quantitative will not be the only thing. For the very reason he left the 99 and going looking for the one.
Okay. A follow-up question?
Sure.
I hesitate to ask this, that it would chew up more time, but I think it's applicable. If the end product of the universe is that many suffer eternal separation, and if this is the result of the free will choice of men, and God purposed for free will to be a component of his plan for the universe,
sure,
then number one, the eternal torment of the most, or even one, seems to be a high price to pay for the eternal happiness of the few. Number two, the eternal torment of the most, or even one, was his will to begin with, since free will was a part of his design for the universe. And the exercise of free will is the very vehicle which will transport many to eternal torment. In other words, God created free will. So isn't there some causality there?
Okay, it could obviously take a whole evening for us to discuss. So let me ask you a couple of questions that'll help me quickly. Do you believe the God of the Bible exists?
Yes.
You do. And you believe he is sovereign?
Yes.
And you believe he created us for a purpose and a design?
I do.
Okay, that'll help me solve it. You do believe that he will do that which is right?
Absolutely.
All right. Then why are we plaguing ourselves with a question of numbers when we can absolutely be sure that what he has said he will honor, shall not the judge of all the earth do right? Now let me reverse that. Let me go back to an earlier comment or two. First of all, it is not the torment of the many that assures the felicity of the few. You have given I don't know if you intended to, there's no causal connection there. There's just a result that has come from this creation. It is not that the many go into a lostness in order that a few can attain felicity. There's no causal connection there. Number two, I don't even like to use the word torment in the way it is classically used. The word lostness and separation is the more important word. Dostoevsky, for example, thought of what it could mean. And one of the comments he said is, if God in his essence is love, then the absence of God must be the presence of hate and the complete absence of love. So I would say those who have chosen in this world, by the sacredness of their will, to reject his love, get confirmed in an eternal existence to live without his love. Hell, Jean-Paul Sartre said, is other people. Well, the other people who have confirmed themselves in a rejection of God take that eternity together. If it is reversed, it would be like this. God would have to overrule the freedom of the many in order to transport them into a heaven that they do not want to be at. I am absolutely convinced rejection of God, heaven or hell, would make no difference, because the choice is to be separated from him. And if you choose to be separated from him, nothing could be more tormenting than for him to be present. So hell is a choice to be absent from him. It is a confirmation of the sacredness of the free will. Do these questions trouble us? Of course. But do I believe in the sovereignty of an infinite God who can make this picture complete without my finite way to comprehensively explain it? Absolutely. There's coherence. If God didn't exist, think of the problem. No heaven, no hell. How do you differentiate between an Adolf Hitler and a Mother Teresa? The question is even more confounding them. So I would go with the sovereign, loving God who has given us the free will and gives us the sanctity of it, than to live in a world where there is no heaven and no hell and no difference between a Hitler and a Teresa.